From my private website, the Safe Zone series, released November and December of 2018.
Part 27, the 33rd parallel, explained on the flat earth. The answer to why the 33rd parallel is the safest place to be during the electromagnetic plasma changeover. A little geometry refresher. The diameter of a circle or disk is the distance from one side of the circle or disk to the opposite side of the circle or disk. The black circle is the equator, or 1/2 the diameter of the disk. The red circle is the 33rd parallel, or 1/3 the diameter of the disk. This diagram is the answer. Part 27A, I will explain the diagram and why. Part 27A, the dome above and inside our dome on the flat earth. So to understand the model and why the 33rd parallel is so vital to survival during the electromagnetic plasma changeover, you have to know about the domes above our head centered on the North Pole axis. It's not our dome they saw in the past red skies. It was the dome and domes above us that they witnessed. Domes within domes, or the concentric circles in the Atlantis stories. Domes were and are a staple in architecture. Not just because structurally they are extremely strong, but because they were building in honor of the gods and their homes. Modern domes are just a carryover knowledge from the masons of old. Right, Buckminster Fuller? Sneaky, sneaky. Domes are strong, but don't last. They will all eventually fail. Anyone from the Pacific Northwest knows that all too well. Just an FYI, kingdom is the same as kingdom. Vowels are interchangeable and can be added or removed. So the kingdom of heaven is the kingdom of heaven, or the dome of the kings. Your kings and masters of the realms or discs in each dome. The kingdom only stood for 20 years before it became unsafe and the roof started to give way. The type of material that makes up the domes determines strength and longevity. Bad news for everyone. Ice is not the best material to make a dome out of. Ice is brittle and will break, and it will melt with temperature increases, i.e., a plasma conflagration event. I'm going at a slow pace so you all can see the structure within the structure. The Matryoshka doll effect, the domes within domes. Domes, domes, and more domes. Next video, part 27B, pressure and the lack of pressure on the flat Earth. Part 27B, pressure and the lack of pressure on the flat Earth. Remember, everything is life. It is either living or deceased. All life's base structure is exactly the same as the large-scale world that we reside in. Domes will attach to the outside and will also form on the inside of larger domes. The connection process is due to the instructions within the genetic code for that cell and form of life. All life grows. Within growth comes pressure. Pressure causes heat. Heat causes gases. The pressure and heat creates the gases which cause the waters above and the ice dome to stay in place above. When the pressure escapes and is removed, then the structure cannot maintain its form and will collapse. So during the electromagnetic plasma changeover, the pressure holding the waters above will be removed, and the waters above will come crashing down. And the ice dome above us will no longer have the air and water pressure to hold it in place. And it will crack and fail at its weakest point. Revelations 16:21, King James Version. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceedingly great. Job 38:29, King James Version. Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frost of heaven? Who hath gendered it? Next video, part 27C, how domes collapse on the flat Earth. Part 27C, how domes collapse on the flat Earth. The smaller blue dome above us is exactly 1/2 the diameter of our dome, the larger purple dome. Oh, by the way, now you know the answer to the southern and northern hemisphere star trail problem. I'll go into the explanation later in the series. Okay, back to the dome structure. A dome's weakest point is obviously at the top center. You don't need to be a structural engineer to understand the load forces that apply to the top of a dome. When the structure fails, this is the end result. The outer walls or perimeter of the dome will remain intact, while the arches to the center will come crashing down. so the top center of the structure, or the roof, will fail. The walls will usually survive the collapse. A roof collapsing is the greatest danger to any residents beneath the roof. If you are under the roof when it fails, say bye-bye. It's not going to end well for you. So if you are in an earthquake, they try to train people to go under the door frames on the outside or exterior wall. Your chances of survival are greatest there during the collapse of a building or roof. Sometimes all or just part of the roof will fail, depending on the forces applied to the structure. Smaller events will only take portions of a roof. Nature will always have examples on smaller scales that we can observe and learn from. A volcano's dome and collapse will show someone a similar process created from pressure. The collapsed dome or caldera will be somewhat symmetrical. But a collapsing dome or roof in nature won't fail, making perfect circles. It will be uneven and random due to the different strengths of materials and other variables. The jagged nature of the collapsing roof explains why it is safest in or around the perimeter of the dome structure. Falling debris from the dome or roof above us is catastrophic to anything below when it comes crashing down. Next video, part 27D, a roof in the sky for your protection on the flat earth. Part 27D, a roof in the sky for your protection on the flat earth. The domes above our sky. There are other smaller domes, but they do not matter in the context of the catastrophe. They are too far north to be any concern with survival. Each dome is exactly 1/2 the size of the dome it resides in or on. The blue dome is 1/2 the size of the purple. The pinkish dome is 1/2 the size of the blue or 1/4 the size of the purple. Every dome has a landmass being formed and expanding in between the flip and choke rings. When Mercator looked up above him in the red sky, this is what he saw. The yellow landmass is actually the smaller pinkish dome's disk above us. The outer land masses are ours, reflected. The smaller inner circles are the ones that don't matter to this discussion, too small and too far north. Atlantis was never down here on our plane. It is what they saw above and at the north in the red sky, domes within domes. The Matryoshka doll effect. This is Atlantis. Domes or bowls within bowls, centered on the North Pole axis above our plane. Atlantis solved. That's why they thought it sank beneath the sea, because it did. The waters above during the red to blue sky changeover. Now I know there is much debate on the actual correct map of the flat Earth. It doesn't matter. All you need to know is the safe parallels to be when the electromagnetic plasma changeover event happens. Know your parallel and then plan accordingly. Different challenges for different bands or distances away from the North Pole axis. Danger: ice dome collapse area, 45 degrees north to about 23 degrees north. Good news: collapses to the disk above within their dome. Extreme danger: ice dome collapse area, equator to about 45 degrees south. Sorry to all in the southern hemisphere, but this is your greatest threat. It's why you all have no remnants of civilization pretty much anywhere. Large chunks of ice will obliterate everything on the surface. Caves will be better for you than on the surface. Remember, the ice breaks in jagged patterns, so roof cover will depend on that variable also. Northern roof cover, North Pole or 90 degrees north to 45 degrees north. The pinkish dome's disk shields us from their ice dome collapse. It's why most civilizations have a better chance up north, along with closer distances for trade and exchange of ideas. Don't get too excited yet, you northern folk. The model has another surprise for only you. Have you ever wondered why only the North has had ice ages? Well, they weren't caused by ice, but rather water. Yeah, floods are your enemy during the electromagnetic plasma changeover event. The price to be paid for living so close to the drain from above. Next video, part 27E, the waters up north on the flat Earth. Part 27D1, explaining the solid structure your plane resides in. No vacuums or empty spaces on the flat Earth. I need to explain the physical nature of the structure a little better for you all. Over on Mia's member site, some really great questions have been asked. One was about how the structure stays in place during the EMPCOE. That is what I will be covering in this video. Okay, to the structure. You have all been conditioned and indoctrinated to believe that there is empty space everywhere, from the small scale with atoms. Atoms consist of 99.9999999% empty space. That means the computer you're looking at, the chair you're sitting on, and you yourself are mostly not there. Wrong. And you all have been conditioned and indoctrinated on the large scale in their theory of space. They have been hammering down everyone's throats this crap since we were in elementary school, that there are millions and billions of miles in between objects in space, and large areas of literally nothing via black holes, dark matter, and dark energy. It is all crap. The only vacuum in space is the vacuum in the movie Spaceballs. A cell has no empty spaces. It consists of solids, liquids, and gases. An apple has no empty spaces. It consists of solids, liquids, and gases. A neuron and a brain have no empty spaces. It consists of solids, liquids, and gases. There are no empty spaces in your disk. It consists of solids, liquids, and gases. There are no empty spaces in the domes. It consists of solids, liquids, and gases. There are no empty spaces anywhere. All spaces are occupied by either solids, liquids, or gases. These bowls, domes, and disks are connected and attached together to form complex structures. They are the building block for life. They stack, extend, and expand upon one another and inside one another. Look at these cells. Do you see how they all form domes? Two domes, base to base, form spheres, but they all build upon each other. Electromagnetism is actually two distinct things that work in tandem with one another. One, electricity. Two, magnetism. The electricity is what changes directions during the EMPCOE. The magnetic bowl structures do not change or move. They stay in place. So the foundation, the magnetic bowls, stays in place to hold the structure in place, along with the solids that were created in between the flip and choke rings. So the ice dome will fail in places because ice is brittle and it is not part of the foundation of the structure of the cell. It forms on the inside of the magnetic dome structure. During the EMPCOE, solids retain the structure of the cell, mostly. Wink, wink. It's the fluids that create most of the havoc. The liquids and the gases. What a solid doesn't occupy, a liquid or gas will flow towards and fill that space. To sum up, the structure is held together by the magnetic bowls and the solid matter they produce. So only the ice dome fails, but the structure remains intact. Part 27E, The Waters Up North on the Flat Earth. The BS CGI theory of the ice ages from the mainstream scientists. LOL. The only evidence of any ice ages occur in the north and not in the south makes absolutely no sense in their ball Earth model. But on a flat Earth, it makes perfect sense why it would only happen in the north. According to the evidence, there have been 5 major ice ages, again, all up north. These events did not happen tens of thousands of years ago. They happened at every EMPCOE. And they were not ice. It was liquid waters that flooded the north, and only the north. So what evidence is there that it was water and not ice, and that it happened immediately and not over thousands of years? To get ice sheets to be miles thick, you have to have massive amounts of precipitation to fall and accumulate in their model. To get that much moisture in the air, you have to have massive amounts of heat to evaporate said waters. Ice Age theories claim to have huge periods of cold. Cold air does not have the ability to hold the moisture for that kind of precipitation, called the saturation point. Other evidence: erratics, giant boulders and stones that were deposited in areas hundreds of miles away from the originating rock formations, again only found in the northern latitudes. Anyone that has ever been in a flood knows the power of water. The larger the volume of water, the greater force exerted on any debris in its path, including large boulders and stones. The Mount St. Helens eruptions in 1980 created the lahars, instantly melting snow and ice from the peak that moved boulders, houses, etc. Waters create the force and the lack of friction necessary to move the erratics. No different than flowing water in a river, moving pebbles on a riverbank. Or waves of water moving sand and stones on an ocean shore. Stones, rocks, and pebbles are moved all the time in nature from flowing water. These rocks were not moved by slow-moving glaciers over thousands of years. They were moved by copious amounts of water. And floods happen instantly, not over thousands of years, but say within a period of 7 days, or Hell Week. Then you have the written descriptions in our true history. Jeremiah 47:2, King James Version. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, waters rise up out of the north, and shall be an overflowing flood, and shall overflow the land, and all that is therein, the city and them that dwell therein. Then the men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall howl. Next video, part 27F, the danger areas up north on the flat earth. Part 27F, the danger areas up north on the flat earth. Okay, so now you know about the floods up north. That is key for all the people in the northern latitudes. The roof over your head protects you from the ice, but not from the waters. The furthest extent of the waters lets you know a parameter of where the next waters will flow to. During the greatest reach of one of the last EMPCOE floods is seen in this image of the north. This is the worst case scenario, but it is the correct place to start planning if you are in those regions. Mountains and elevation are your friends. You will have to be above or higher than the waters. The only way to escape the floods, if you are in their path, is getting high in elevation. Plus, You will most likely have fresh drinking water from the snow at these elevations. Some good news for the folks up north. The waters from the north will quell the conflagration fires in the low levels, valleys, basins, etc. But be careful, there will be fire danger at those elevations that the waters from the north do not quell. So you will have to be well above the forests and trees that provide fuel for the conflagration fires. So in your exit plan, learn and know the tree line of your local mountains. A tree line is just the highest elevation that trees can grow due to elevation, CO2 levels, precipitation, sunlight, etc. All tree lines vary depending on local conditions. The waters up north are not a tsunami wave caused from the earth shaking. Tsunami waves will wipe out all coastal regions worldwide, so plan on being at elevation or inland worldwide to escape the tsunami waves from our existing large bodies of water. Let us use me as an example. I live at the 33rd parallel, but if I stay where I'm at, I will be dealt a quick death in San Diego from the oceanic tsunami that will kill anything in its path. Coastal areas are a death trap. You must get away from the coastlines. Learn your topography, geology, and geography of the region you live or the region you plan on writing the EMPCOE out. If you live or go to north of the 45th parallel north, then these are the things that you will need to watch out for. Russia. Know your elevation in relation to the Arctic Ocean and any major elevated formations in between you and the waters coming from the north. Iceland, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, same goes for you. United Kingdom, ditto. Canada and Alaska, yep, your greatest trial through the EMPCOE. The northern states in the continental United States, Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, the Great Lakes states, and the northeastern states. Including the Great Plains states. Those states have a low elevation that ties to the north. The Great Plains are a death trap. Enough with the bad news. The good news is the EMPCOE is not this year. So you have another year to plan accordingly and get everything correct to make it through. To all my friends in the Southern Hemisphere, I know I gave you all some really bad news about the ice, but if you all survive the ice, then you will have plenty of safe drinking water from said melting huge chunks of ice to get through Hell Week and beyond. Next video, part 27G, the conflagration danger areas on the flat Earth. Part 27G, the conflagration danger areas on the flat Earth. All forests are a danger zone, as well as all jungles. Forests and jungles provide the fuel for the conflagration fires. Here are the world's largest forests and jungles, the green areas. The areas up north will be quelled by the north waters. It is the forests and jungles around the equator that will burn and destroy everything in those areas. The southeastern United States and South and eastern Mexico and Central America. All of South America is in the danger zone except high in the Andes, hence the reason for the Inca ruins still intact. Remember, ice will be falling from the equator to about 45 degrees south latitude. Africa, north of the equator, will burn up to the Sahara Desert. South of equator, ice will be falling. Australia, ice falling, get to southern part of country by 45 degrees south, away from coastline. Hope ice wall holds there. New Zealand, conflagration danger. Southeast Asian islands, conflagration above equator. Ice south of equator. India, China, and Southeast Asia, conflagration. Japan, conflagration and tsunamis. Eastern Russia, waters from north, and conflagrations. Southern Russia, old Soviet states, waters from north. Mongolia, Himalayas, not bad. Northern Europe, waters up north. Southern Europe, conflagration. Forests, jungles, and cities will burn. Grasslands are safer but will still burn, but way more survivable. But grasslands in the north, i.e. Great Plains and Russian steppe, etc., will flood from waters up north. Here is the world distribution of grasslands, tundra, grasslands, and savannas. Deserts are the safest place from the conflagration. However, you have ice falling below the equator and liquefaction problem in all other deserts, and the drinking water problem. However, you may have some water from ice falling south of the equator. Here are the world's major deserts. I told you this wasn't going to be easy. Next video, part 27H, deforestation and forest management on the flat earth. Part 27H, deforestation and forest management on the flat earth. Brian has gone and lost his mind. Why on earth would he be covering the deforestation and forest management topics in this series? In the context of evolution and that everything goes on forever without any catastrophes, then deforestation would be bad. On the other hand, when you know the reality of your world and the real truth, then deforestation is an absolute necessity to mitigate the damages caused by the EMPCOE. You see, without the truth, nothing makes sense. with the truth, everything makes sense. The controllers have always had a problem: how to rebuild civilization and still reduce the damage caused by the EMPCOEs. For the controllers to rebuild this, they need slaves. That would be you and this, metals. And as we all know, that is a very bad thing during the EMPCOE. Those slaves need cheap and affordable shelter, so the controllers need this: lumber. To get the lumber, they need timber. To get the timber, they need forests. More specifically, conifer forests. The conifer forests of the world, the darker greens. What are conifers? Pine and fir trees. Conifers are fast-growing, lighter, and softer wood, and straight, easier for felling, transport, storage, and milling into lumber than deciduous trees. And conifers are mostly inedible. Most of the large herbivores will not eat the needles, cones, and bark, except moose, beavers, porcupines, etc. But generally speaking, they can be grown without large-scale destruction from animal life. So now ask yourself a question. Knowing what you know now, if you were a controller, where would you plant and grow the conifer forests to get the timber to make lumber to build cheap shelters for the slaves? Yep, above the 45th degree north latitude. Why? If you have to create a huge fuel source where it would inevitably feed the conflagration fires during the EMPCOE, the controllers realized they needed to keep that fuel source up north, where the waters from the north will quell said fuel source, and keep as many large areas around the safe zones of the 33rd degree parallel combustion free. In the form of dry, desolate, semi-arid, or desert-like conditions. And how do they do that? Weather modification. The deforestation of the Amazon, Central Africa, and the Far East around the equator is to mitigate and to create enormous fire breaks. Anyone who has fought a fire knows about fire breaks. It is an attempt to remove combustible material to prevent the fire from going in a certain direction. Fire breaks can be small or very large depending on the size of the forest or potential fuel source for any fires. Clear-cutting checkerboard patterns are the current method of logging. The loggers don't understand why, but the top-level forest managers do. These clear-cutting methods are being used as huge fire breaks for the inevitable conflagration fires that will arrive soon. The very top-level controllers know exactly what they are trying to mitigate. They know from their real history that they are only taught about the conflagration fires. Just like the tree line safe zones at elevation, the controllers are trying to create fire breaks and safe zones within the forests. Will it be enough? No, because they do not understand the plasma and how it reaches out and touches everything. They just know it is a fire, but we all know it is so much more. Next video, part 27I, oil and petroleum on the flat earth. Part 27I, oil and petroleum on the flat earth. You all see this black gold and think it is finite and rare, i.e. Hubbard and peak oil. And gas and fossil fuels run our economy, and we would be in the Stone Age without them. Wrong. Oil is just a combustible material that needs to be removed. Before the conflagration fires start. Oil fields are ticking time bombs that will ignite and explode from the plasma and fires. Better to have billions of combustion engines igniting the fuel source every day all over the world for over a century than it going boom all at once during the EMPCOE. So the controllers take the ultimate hazardous natural resource and find as many uses as possible for it. Petroleum products made from a barrel of crude oil. Butane, diesel fuel, fuel oil, gasoline, kerosene, liquefied natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, propane, microcrystalline wax, napalm, naphtha, naphthalene, paraffin wax, petroleum jelly, petroleum wax, refined asphalt, refined bitumen. And what they don't turn into a fuel source, they make into other junk products and then convince you that you need to buy them. Over 6,000 items are made from petroleum waste byproducts, including fertilizer, flooring, perfume, insecticide, petroleum jelly, soap, vitamins, and some essential amino acids. Things made from oil, from toys to sporting equipment to rubber, plastic, shoes, umbrellas, tents. Pretty much anything you find in a store is made from byproduct of oil. Then you have their real moneymaker, the pharmaceuticals. Old Pappy John D. Rockefeller, the son of the original snake oil salesman. No shit, he really was. 6,000 products, and they all are extremely toxic and bad for you. The controllers don't want the slave force to become old and wise. So they sell you poisons and get all the mindless morons clamoring for the newest toxic petroleum byproduct on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Maybe the black in Black Friday has something to do with where all their shit they are selling you comes from. Now do you see? That is why the vast majority of oil is being removed from the deserts and the areas around the 33rd degree north. Again, the controllers are keeping as many large areas around the safe zones of the 33rd degree parallel combustion and explosion free. They are just removing the fuel sources for the upcoming conflagration and trying to mitigate the damage of the EMPCOE. Next video, part 27J, the lesser of all evils on the flat earth. Part 27J, the lesser of all evils on the flat earth. So when harvest time comes, everybody will get ready, and you should be ready well before Thanksgiving of the year that it's going to happen. Most important thing, find your rock. You have to be on solid ground, or anything I discuss after this is pointless. Okay, you have to be on solid ground, or it's going to be really short for you. And then you're going to need that rope. Make sure you have that rope. And then this is how Hell Week is going to go. First thing you get is the pressure release. And all this stuff happens on the first day, and it's going to be quick. The EM changeover, so you'll be lifted up. That's going to be really quick. And then after that, it's going to be from the pressure and winds and a suction, which will create a vortex that will be lifting everything up. So keep yourself tied down with the rope through the duration of the winds. Not sure how many days that's going to be, but you'll want to be tied down all the way through that. Then the earthquake comes, and this is no normal earthquake. This is a world shaker. And it will split, and it'll create crevices and all that stuff because it's expanding, which I'll get into the next part. You'll have landslides, lots of them, lots of rock slides, and mudslides. So in your exit plan, know where fault lines, not how they say they are, but just fault lines where earthquakes usually happen. That's going to be where the majority of the shaking is going to happen everywhere. But those are the really high danger areas. So know your local areas where earthquakes happen. And then you're going to get into the volcanoes. So know where the volcanoes are. And you're going to have explosions, lahars, you're going to have ash clouds, you're going to have lava that's going to be coming out from certain types of volcanoes. So you're going to have to know if that stuff is by you. So know where volcanoes are. For instance, I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, volcanoes everywhere up there. So you have to take volcanoes into account also. So while this is going on, you're going to have the ice dome above that's going to crack and break and fall. The ice is going to affect south of the equator to about the 45th degree parallel south. All right. So South America, south part of Africa, Indonesia, and Australia, it's going to be tough for you guys. That's your biggest hurdle. And everywhere by large bodies of water, you're going to have tsunami dangers. Here's a map of low-lying areas around coastal lines that would be inundated with large tsunamis. These tsunamis are going to be massive. I don't know the height, but just plan on if you're not, a couple thousand feet above sea level, you're going to get hit with these things and all the debris that comes with it. So you're not going to want to be in any of these low-lying areas by the sea or other large lakes. All right, and then comes the plasma, and this is all in the first couple hours of the first day. All right, the plasma is going to change over. It's going to start igniting. And this is one thing I have not discussed yet, but I'm using a old map, but just you can envision it on a flat Earth map. The north gets hit the hardest with the plasma because the plasma is centered off of the north. The south, you're going to get some discharge from the plasma arcing, but it's going to be a lot less and it's going to be a lot more spread out. So the closer you get to the north, the more intense the plasma is going to be, and it'll dissipate as it goes away from the north along the flat plane centered from the north. With the plasma comes the fires. All right, this is going to ignite everything: cities, forests, everything. Anything that's combustible is going to go up in flames. Okay, so I went through this pretty thoroughly in the video on conflagration. But here is, I'm showing you all the heavily wooded jungles, forests, and all that stuff from the 45th degree north parallel south. Okay, everything that you see green on this map is going to go up in flames. Okay, the south of the equator, like the Amazon, right there in the Central Africa and over in Indonesia area, that will be quelled a little bit by the falling ice, but just plan on all that stuff is going to be burning and burning intensely. And the places that it's going to burn most intensely is from the equator up to the 20th parallel, because then you'll start running into the deserts that they've kept as huge fire breaks around their safe zones. Now, as far as the 33rd degree, you got to remember this is from a Western point of view. All these people that are doing all this stuff is from Western civilization, so they are concerned with North America safe zones and Southern Europe and the Middle East safe zones. They can get to those areas, and plus they don't have to deal with India and China, because India and China, they have their own long-lasting civilization, and nobody wants to get into a fight with them. So that's why it's pretty much stopped at Iran and Afghanistan. All right, but where I'm pointing out the fires, so like in the southeast United States, it's heavily wooded. That is going to be going up in flames. The Midwest will probably be mostly okay from the fires, but you're going to have the flood waters coming down through the Midwest all the way down to the mouth of the Mississippi. Um, Madagascar, South Africa, parts of South Africa. If you want to get over to the Kalahari Desert, that's probably your best bet, but you got to get elevation. Okay. The key thing in all this, if you can find elevation, you increase your survival chances 100-fold. If you're in Australia, I'm not quite, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the topography and mountains in Australia, but you got to find elevation. And again, in the south, you're dealing with falling ice, so you're going to have some kind of cover, solid cover in caves or something like that. And conversely, up north, you have to worry about the waters up north. This is a good reference point to where the waters could go, but just plan, if you're above the 45th parallel north, plan on everything's going to be flooded. So elevation, elevation, elevation. You have to get above. I don't know how high the waters are going to be, but you have to get elevation. And wherever the water doesn't flood, you're still going to have the conflagration fires that you have to deal with all the forests up there. So you have to get above the tree lines if you're above the 45th degree parallel north. If you live, or if you know of any oil fields, natural gas fields, Anything that's combustible that's out there, you want to get away from those areas. They will ignite, and when they do, they're going to explode and go boom. All right, you want to get away from all of those. So if you live in Texas, you may want to think about getting out of Texas for a whole host of reasons, because it's attached to the Great Plains and everything else. But those oil fields, I know they have tapped a lot of those dry, but oil renews itself. So there's no telling how much oil is still left in there. All right. So here's a map to show where all the major oil fields are. If you're in or by any of those, your exit strategy is going to be wanting to get away from those areas. Deserts and elevation are your friend. However, you have a huge hurdle when it comes to deserts. You have water and food problems. Okay, that's why you're going to have to plan this stuff out. Okay, but elevation and high deserts are your best um, geographical locations to ride this thing out. But you have to find rock formations within that. And as you see here, the reason why the 33rd degree parallel is the safest in reference to the northern hemisphere and the Western civilization is because of the fact that it is the lesser of all evils. There's not, when I first talked about this in part 7 about the 33rd degree parallel, I got comments, people talking about, oh, the vortex this does that, and the plasma does this, and the toroidal field does this, and that's why it's the safest. No, it's the safest because it's the lesser of all evils, because you have the ice south of the equator, you have the waters north of the equator, you have the conflagrations everywhere, and by them manipulating and modifying the weather and keeping large sections of the earth dry, that is why that is, because it's the lesser of all evils. You have a greater chance there. Now, I'm not saying you're going to make it, because you still have to do all the things to make it, but it is the best chance at survival because of a couple natural factors that makes it a little bit easier, and then also because of the weather modification and the terraforming that has been done to keep that as safe as possible. You do all that stuff and you got a good chance to get to the red sky. It's that simple. You make it to the red sky, everything's really good. I mean, after Hell Week, going to be really tough and everything, but you have a chance to get into the golden age, and once you're in the golden age, guess what everybody's going to be doing? They got to repopulate.
Next part will be made public soon.